Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about recognizing signs of stress in yourself. So there are three different types of stress. So we have acute stress, which is when we are in a situation, for example, when something makes us jump, something dangerous happens and the stress floods in to protect us from that situation. We have chronic stress, which is what we're going to focus on more today, which is a buildup of stress hormones over a period of time in your day-to-day life. And we have positive stress. So stress doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It can be like when we are going to do an exam or when we're going on a roller coaster. Or excitement and positive stress can be a good thing sometimes. So those three different types of stress. So we often think about stress coming from like a big traumatic event in our life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. More often than not, stress builds up on a day-to-day basis from what we call micro stresses, which we'll talk about towards the end of this video. So we have four different categories when we are trying to recognize signs of stress in ourselves. So physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral. So first of all, let's start with physical signs of stress. So when we are in a state of stress, we activate the fight or flight system in our brain and body. And what that is it's telling us that something bad is happening, and it's telling us to get away from that situation. So imagine that you are running away from a polar bear. What would be happening is that your heart rate would increase, your palms would go sweaty, your stomach would be churning, all of those physical symptoms would kick in to get you out of that situation. And it's excuse me, it's the same for chronic stress. So when we are suffering from chronic stress, we will be in a state of fight or flight, and we will suffer from physical symptoms. So it might be that you get chest tightness and pain. It might be that you get IBS symptoms kicking in. It might be that you are suffering from headaches, migraines. There are so many different signs of physical stress that I have seen in my practice that people go through all of the tests and everything else, and it comes down to stress. It can be sinus pain, ongoing, so many different types of things, joint pain, tension in your jaw. Honestly, any type of physical symptom can be a sign of stress. It's what we call psychosomatic, and it just means that it is caused by stress, and stress causes a lot of inflammation in our body as well. Inflammation will go into cells in different areas, and it will cause those physical signs of stress. Obviously, in physical situations, always get something checked out by your GP, but don't underestimate that those physical symptoms could be telling you that something isn't quite right in your day-to-day life. Now, next category, emotional signs of stress. So this would be mood changes. So either feeling really low, feeling really anxious, feeling very emotional, any emotional changes in your mood. It can also be using things as a coping mechanism when we feel a particular way. So this might be relying on food as a crutch to make us feel better, or alcohol, spending a lot of money, gambling, anything that we feel that we need an instant pickup, an instant hit of dopamine to make us feel better, to relieve those signs of emotional stress. Now, cognitive stress, so this can be brain fog, lack of focus, memory loss, not being able to remember like where you've put things or what you've gone on to do. Negative thoughts, generally feeling overwhelmed and generally feeling like you can't cope. These are all cognitive signs of stress. And our last category is behavioural, and this can apply to when you are withdrawing away from situations, so socially, not wanting to go out and do things, isolating yourself, when it's affecting relationships, so arguing, anger, when you're feeling like you're arguing with people and getting angry and irritable very easily. So our three opt-out clauses for when we are in a state of stress. The first one is anxiety, which is fight or flight or freeze, and those physical symptoms kicking in, or the anxiety kicking in, and we're always worrying and overthinking about things. The second one is low mood, so withdrawing away from situations, trying to keep yourself safe, away from that polar bear, away in your cave. And the third one is anger, so feeling irritable and wanting to fight back against situations. So when our brain is in a state of fight or flight and those stress hormones build up, it will kick in with one 2 or 3 of those responses, and as a result of those responses we can suffer from all of those different symptoms that I have just explained. Now, where does stress come from? It doesn't necessarily have to come from a big or traumatic event. Obviously, if you've got something big or traumatic going on in your life, then stress hormones will automatically be flooding into your system. But they also come from what we refer to as micro stresses, and it's a little build up day to day of those stresses that we don't necessarily realise. Now, rushing around is the most common one that I see in my practice, because modern life, now humans were not designed to operate in the way that we do now. We were designed to focus on one particular thing at a time. Nowadays we are busy getting up in the morning, sorting the kids out, going to work, making lunches, cooking, doing our work. Where do we find the time to stop and switch off? So those micro stresses, even just thinking about, oh God, when am I going to put the washing on? When am I going to get that sorted? Over committing to certain social situations, not having boundaries at place in work or socially, running late for things. There are so many different little micro stresses that you might not necessarily realise are causing those hormones, those stress hormones, to build up day to day for you. So reflecting on stress is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Recognition is always the first sign that you can then make changes and work on what you need to do to move forward and feel better. So just recognise at the moment, are you experiencing any signs of those stress symptoms, any of the physical ones, any of the emotional ones, the cognitive ones, the behavioural ones? And if so, just have a think about day to day at the moment, what might be contributing to your stress levels and where you can see yourself making just one small little change that could contribute to that. And the more you build in those small little changes over time, the more those symptoms of stress should eventually decrease. Hope that helps.